I'm so glad you could join me today. This is Danny, and welcome back to the greenhouse. Today we are going to get a little bit deeper into Botania. As you might notice, quite a few things have changed in here since the last time we were in here. I have done quite a bit of work, and much of that work is downstairs. And we're going to look at some of that today, but mostly what I want to do is kind of hit some of the next tier crafting stuff. So in our last episode, we talked about some of the basics of Botania, things like the mana pool and the Petal Apothecary. We talked about the runic altar, and we crafted ourselves a Sojourner Sash. And we also talked about mana production, and if you remember, I had a bunch of mana producing flowers over here. That's all that's left of it, is this little stub of ME cable, which I'm probably going to get rid of because I don't think we're going to need it there anymore. I have moved all the mana generation downstairs in order to make room, because it was getting really messy up here, and it was looking kind of ugly. And I want our greenhouse to stay nice and pretty and clean. And what I've basically done is I've moved everything in the basement that we don't need to interact with. And there is a lot of stuff down there. Some of which we're going to talk about today, and some of which we're not. Some of that we're going to save for the next episode. But let's just take a really quick peek at what's down there. Da-da-da-da-da. So we've got, this is basically our Botania automation room. Now we're not going to talk about automation today. We're going to save that for the next episode. What we are going to talk about today is kind of the next tier of crafting and how to make some of the more advanced items in Botania. We're going to talk about this guy, our terrestrial agglomeration plate, which is where we're going to be making our Terrasteel. We're also going to talk about this Elven Portal out here. Alvin, not Elvin like Elvin and the Chipmunks, but Alvin as in like elves. And we're going to finish putting that together. In a minute. I had a big mess out here before because of all the stuff I had in here. I was just putting a bunch of stuff out here, and just as kind of a joke, I put down this trodden dirt. Now this trodden dirt is actually, I don't remember if I talked about this last time or not, but it's a Botania thing. It doesn't grow grass, and you can actually run a little bit faster in it, just slightly faster. But I kind of put it out here to kind of show just kind of where I was running around and stuff, and the mess, just to kind of make it look messier, because it already looked really messy, and I thought it was kind of funny. But anyway, so let's start with, I guess we'll start with the end in mind, because what I've done is I've bookmarked a few different items that I think are pretty cool, and they're items that we would not have been able to make last time with the knowledge that we had, and with the, just with our mana pool and our Petal Apothecary and Runic Altar, we wouldn't have been able to make these things, most of them. Orchid. It turns nearby stone blocks into ores. The Lunium drops dungeon chest items randomly. The Ring of Far Reach. Now this is what I think we're going to make today, and this is kind of going to be one of our goals for today. The Ring of Far Reach basically extends your reach. So if we go out here, there's a certain distance that you can break blocks in Minecraft, right? So if we take our shovel, we can go about that far. So what's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the Far Reach, the Ring of Far Reach will extend that so that we can go even further without having to move in that direction. So it'll extend our reach, basically, which also includes our reach when we fight mobs. So we'll be able to hit mobs before they can get close enough to hit us. So that is pretty cool. It's a very nice little item. And then there's the Ring of Chordata. This guy, what does this guy do again? Oh, it's basically, it gives you respiration underwater. It makes you fast. It makes you underwater sight. So it's pretty amazing. But it does require mana. Of course, all these things require mana. The flowers will take mana from a nearby mana pool, where these guys that you wear on you will take mana from... and then the Ring of Mantle just gives you haste. Something interesting in this book. There's a few items that are highlighted green. These items, when you first make your Lexica Botania, do not exist. So actually, this is a little bit of a spoiler, because this is kind of later game stuff. These things do not appear in the Lexica Botania until the elves have had a look at your book and add a few things to it for you. So, and the way this happens is through this Elven Portal. Actually, it's the Portal of Alfheim or something like that. Let's just look it up. The Portal of Alfheim. So, basically the concept behind it's another crafting mechanic. In short, it's another crafting mechanic. You throw stuff in there just like all the others. You know, you throw something in there and you get something back. So just like when we throw an ender pearl in the mana pool, we get a mana pearl back. In this case, we throw some other things in it and we get some more advanced items back. And the book tells you all about the lore behind it and how and the blocks that you need in order to craft it. And then what's really cool is it also lets you visualize it. So you click visualize and you get this you know what, let's turn this rain off so that we can see what we're doing here. It always comes down to this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so then we basically just click on the ground here and it'll show us what it looks like, which is really great because it gives you a sense of how much space it's going to take up. And you can also just craft it right here, so we can put blocks right where these blocks are and it'll guide us through the process. So that is actually really cool. I have not seen that with any other mods. So in order to craft this thing, we need 3 glimmering living wood, which is just living wood, which we learned how to make last time, with a couple pieces of glowstone. And then we need this special block called the Elven Gateway Core. The Elven Gateway Core is probably the most expensive block here. It's just 6 living wood and then these 3 Terrasteel nuggets. Terrasteel is something that we get, whoops, when we drop Mana Steel, a Mana Pearl, and a Mana Diamond on this Terrasteel Terrasteel Agglomeration Plate. You drop these 3 items on here and you get Terrasteel. And you will need 1 ingot of Terrasteel in order to construct this whole thing. Now this thing is kind of expensive. 3 blocks of lapis, a block of mana steel, and then a bunch of runes. I think they're all level 1 runes, and then you have the rune of mana, which is, you know, the one that takes. So you're going to need a lot of mana steel in order to craft this thing, and you're going to need a lot of lapis because you have to place this thing down on this checkerboard pattern of living wood rock. There's living wood rock under the plate. So 5 pieces of living wood rock and then 4 blocks of lapis. So you're going to end up needing 7 blocks of lapis. An iron to get a mana steel, a diamond to get our mana diamond, and then an ender pearl to get our mana pearl. And then what we're going to need to do is drop these 3 on here, but this thing is going to need mana. In fact, it's going to need quite a bit of mana. It's going to need about a half a mana pool in order to make a single Terrasteel ingot. Now, as it turns out, I'm producing a heck of a lot of mana right now, so it's not a really big deal, but just make sure that you have at least a half a mana pool, and you're going to want sparks. So what a spark is, now remember last time we were using these mana spreaders to move mana around. A spark basically allows mana to be shared between mana pools. So downstairs, I've got all these mana pools and they all have sparks on them. And they're configured in such a way that these two are receiving mana. It's being distributed to all of the others, all the other mana pools. Oops. and eventually they're coming up here, as this happens to be a dominant spark, which we'll talk about in a little while. But the spark will allow you to transfer mana to this thing quickly enough. And also be aware that if you don't have enough mana, it's going to suck up all the mana you've got, and then it's going to fail. So make sure you have enough, or you're going to end up wasting your mana. When I'm done with this video, there we go. So now, there we go. So it used well. So our mana pool is still full because of the sparks, but if we go down here, we should see that these guys have each lost about a quarter, because we've used about a half a mana pool to make our Terrasteel Ingot. So that's how we make our Terrasteel Ingot in order to make our Elven Gateway Core. And we also need 2 mana pools, and then these Natura Pylons. So the Natura Pylon is a mana pylon, which is 2 mana steel, a mana diamond, and a gold. That's all stuff we've done before. An Eye of Ender, and then 3 the Terrasteel nuggets. So in total we'll be using an entire Terrasteel Ingot. 3 nuggets for this, 3 nuggets for that, and then 3 nuggets for this. So there it is. There's our Portal of Alfheim. And what's going to happen now when we when we right click with the Wand of the Forest on the core is it's going to suck up some mana from our mana pools, and it's going to activate this portal. Ta-da! And then in order to keep the portal open, you can see it used a little bit of mana. It's already it's already refilling. And then to keep this portal running, it's going to use a small amount of mana over time. I'm not exactly sure what the amount of mana is, but it's a pretty small amount. I mean, I barely noticed that it was draining anything from my mana pools. So now what we can do is we can throw stuff in there to get stuff back. So what we're probably, in fact, the reason I made this thing in the first place was because I wanted to augment our sparks. We talked a little bit about sparks already as a way to manage mana, in order for us to allow our mana pools to share mana. And you already kind of saw how that worked. I mean, we used a half a pool of mana here in order to make our Terrasteel Ingot, and this mana pool is still full because it was pulling from the mana pools down here. So we've got these sparks, and if you just set the sparks up by themselves, they're not going to do a whole lot. So what we need are these Spark Augments. So we have the Spark, which we already talked about, is Blaze Powder, a Gold Nugget, and then 2 Mana Petals of any kind, but they have to be the same. And then what we have 4 different augments that we can use. We have Dispersive, Dominant, Recessive, and Isolated. So on these pools I have the Recessive augment. And what that means is that these pools will always drain to any other nearby pools with sparks. So until all of them are either full or this one is empty. So that's why I'm using the recessive ones on this, basically our source mana pool. So all the mana gets shot into these mana pools, and these mana pools will not fill up until all of the other pools in the network are full, unless they're isolated. We'll get to isolated later. And then we have Dominant. Now Dominant is just the opposite of Recessive. So this one up here is Dominant, which basically means that it will pull from all other mana pools that are not Dominant or Dispersive or Isolated. So it'll pull from augmented pools, and it will pull from recessive pools. So basically, you're going to want to use dominant for any pools that are kind of the ones that you're going to be using all the time. So the ones that you always want to be full of mana. So now basically this one pool has access to all the mana in our entire network, except for the other dominant pools. Now I also have these two as dominant, so that these mana pools remain full all the time, so that when we're using a bunch of mana over here, it's not going to end up sucking mana out of those pools, because we don't want that, because then it might end up closing down our portal. This one over here is not augmented, so I have no augment in it. That means that it will pull from recessive pools, and it will allow dominant pools to pull from it. So that's basically those concepts. Dominant means it pulls from other pools. Recessive means it empties itself into other pools. And unaugmented means that it will allow it will allow dominant to pull from it, and it will accept from recessive. Here I've got a Dispersive Spark. A Dispersive Spark will, as you can see, you see the particle effect. It's following me. A Dispersive Spark will disperse mana to any nearby items that require it. So in my case, I've got this greater band of mana, which stores mana. It's just kind of like last time we talked about the mana tablet. This is basically a mana tablet, but it stores a much larger amount of mana. And it's always full as long as I'm within range of this Dispersive Spark. Pixie Dust, a Rune, and Terrasteel Ingot. Now the Runes and Terrasteel Ingots we learned about last time. The Pixie Dust is something brand new. If we look in our Lexica Botania for Pixie Dust... Oh, actually the first thing I should mention, once we create this Elven thing, this portal, we're going to want to throw our Lexica Botania in there. And we're going to get it back. Actually, I'm not, because that was the wrong kind. So if you throw something in there that you're not... Oh, we did get it back. Okay. If you throw... By the way, if you throw something in there that's not supposed to go in there, the elves will take it as a donation. And it'll just disappear. And you'll never see it again. So don't do that. I suppose you could use it as a void if you wanted to, for items you want to get rid of. So to get the Pixie Dust, we throw in a mana pearl. So we'll go in here, we'll get a mana pearl. Oh, actually, let's get a ender pearl. Drop it in our dominant mana pool. We get our mana pearl back. We throw it in there, and we get back Pixie Dust. So that's how you get Pixie Dust. And there's quite a few things that you can make that way. In fact, if you look, let's see, if we just go to Pixie Dust and then you click here on recipes, there's actually 9 different items that you can get out of the Alchemy Catalyst. Underneath this mana pool, we have an Alchemy Catalyst. And it's just basically a block that expands the functionality of the mana pool. So you need a couple of these, you need a mana pearl, and then some living rock. So it's not terribly expensive. And it allows you to do some things that you couldn't otherwise do. Like, for instance, we can make leather out of rotting flesh. That's one of my favorite uses of that. Not so much in this world, but if you're in a world where you don't have a ton of rotting flesh, I mean, you have a ton of rotting flesh, of course, because you always do, but you don't have a ton of leather. You can make leather that way, and there's quite a few other recipes that you can make that way. And you can find those in the Lexica Botania. You can also find them through our NEI. So right there. And of course, we can look up recipes here. And if you see a recipe, it'll show the Alchemy Catalyst on the left. That means that in order to do this recipe, the mana pool needs the Alchemy Catalyst underneath it. So why don't we go ahead and make something cool? just so we can practice using our new stuff. So I want to do this Ring of Far Reaching, which is 4 Elementium Ingots and a Rune of Pride. So we already looked at the Rune of Pride, and that it... Whoops, this is one of the 3rd tier runes, so it's going to require a 1st tier rune, a 2nd tier rune, and then 2 mana diamonds. All of the 3rd tier runes are like that, and they're the 7 deadly sins. So this one is Pride. Of course, these recipes are in NEI too, as well as the Botania. Okay, so now the Elementium Ingot requires 2 mana steel in the Elven trade thingamajigger. So, so we're gonna need 8 mana steel. So we'll grab 8 iron. Go right here. Here's our 8 mana steel. Go over here. And then we should get 4. 4 Elementium back from the elves. So we're doing the Pride right now. Mana Diamond, we need the Rune of Fire, we need the Rune of Summer, and we're gonna need another Living Rock. But that should be done by now. Click with the Wand of the Forest. It's showing us the rune we're making, and it's giving us a little progress bar. Grab our Living Rock that we made. Alright, all set. Back off so that we don't pick it up. And there we have it. It got picked up by my item. I really need to fix that issue, but I will do that off camera. I won't bore you with it. Alright, we should have everything now to make our Ring of Far Reach. Yay! So this guy is going to take up mana. Oh boy. I don't have any more ring slots. Now, take our shovel. Stand here. look at that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares away from me. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but the ring, the Sojourner Sash actually multiplies the effect of the dark boots and dark leggings. I have speed 3 in my dark leggings, which is pretty fast. But if we throw out our Sojourner Sash, put it in here, this is speed 3, which is pretty fast. We add the Sojourner Sash, now we're even faster. That's just my walk speed. This is my running speed. Whee! And it also increases the jump boost. Of course, I've got a jetpack, so it's kind of hard to see that, but increases the jump boost that my dark armor gives me as well. Those are some of our more advanced Botania stuff. Of course, you can look in this book, and there's so much more interesting stuff in here that I've barely scratched the surface. So if there is anything in particular that you want me to cover in Botania, let me know, because there's a lot. I'm not gonna cover everything, but what I will talk about next time. Oh, we still have a hole here. What I will talk about next time is auto crafting. I have actually set up auto crafting for every Botania crafting mechanism, including the Pure Daisy, the Terrasteel, the Elven Portal, or the Portal of Alfheim, or whatever, and all this stuff. The Petal Apothecary, of course, the Mana Pool, and the Runic Altar, which was probably the most difficult. I hope you join me next time to check out auto crafting in Botania. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.